You are a threat to the controlled narrative. Other than POTUS, can you name one group more attacked by the fake news media? Multiple tactics are being deployed, including framing for crimes. Think bridge, think mob boss, etc., etc. Desperation. Reconcile using logic. Think for yourself. Dividers will fail.
Thank you.
Press Mr. Biden, sir.
Thank you.
Press, we're paying.
I wish him luck. I do wish him luck.
Come on out of the videos.
Because he's gonna need it. President Trump always wishing his opponents the best of luck. Because not only are they going up against the most formidable political foe, or foe otherwise, in their entire life, but Joe Biden has the full might and fury of the Democratic Party coming against him. We know that former President Hussein does not want Biden on the ticket. He's hoping for a more left-leaning radical candidate such as Alexandria Occasional-Cortex. First of all, just want to say thank you to my friend Methods for setting up this clip. Now quickly, before we get into the news, a word from my sponsor. Now, my viewers know how I feel about President Trump, and they also know how I feel about the Mueller investigation. Well, recently Trump arrived home from a golf weekend. He was smiling as he walked across the White House lawn. His smile wasn't about the golf, though. The smile was because it's taken 2,800 subpoenas, 500 search warrants, 19 lawyers, and 40 FBI agents for Donald Trump to announce the attempt to tie him to Russian interference in the 2016 election has officially failed. It was a complete and total exoneration. If you're a fan of the president and want to show your support, you might want to celebrate the news with one of these: the solid silver or pure gold President Trump Freedom Coins. You can call 888-601-0081 today to order, or you can visit TrumpCoin2020.com. But don't forget to use the code REDPILL78 to save $5 off per silver coin, or use the code REDPILL78GOLD to save $100 off the gold coin. Now, speaking of Alexandria Occasional-Cortex, that socialist says her latest campaign finance charges are bogus. They're not real. They're fake news. On Wednesday, the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, a First Amendment watchdog, filed another complaint against Representative Alexandria Occasional-Cortex, this time targeting her and her campaign manager, Chakra Bhatti. Spanning nearly 50 pages and levying more than 20 counts against Occasional-Cortex, Chakra Bhatti, and the entities they created to carry out an unlawful dark money scheme, the complaint provides the most in-depth analysis of Occasional-Cortex's various campaign finance violations to date. This follows a complaint filed with the Federal Election Committee in March, where the two PACs founded by Alexandria Occasional-Cortex's top aide, Saikat Chakrabarti, funneled over $1 million in political donations into two of his own private companies, reported the Washington Examiner. Today, the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation filed more charges. Here, in the complaint's own words, Occasional-Cortex and Chakrabarti engaged in a brazen scheme involving multiple political and commercial entities under their control to violate federal election law, circumvent federal contribution limits and reporting requirements, and execute an unlawful subsidy scheme. This scheme allowed Occasional-Cortex to gain an unfair advantage by receiving illegally excessive contributions and illegally subsidized campaign services. Later today, Rep. Occasional-Cortex responded to the latest FEC complaints filed against her and her campaign chairman. The bartender says they're bogus. Let's take a listen.
Any remarks on the latest complaint filed against you?
Oh, I mean, it's conservative interest groups just filing bogus stuff on
I don't know about that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dismissing the latest campaign finance allegations lodged against her. Let's bring in.
Their campaign was... She just trailed right off, didn't even allow her full argument to come out. She couldn't wait to get away from that reporter asking that question. And it seems to me that every time she gets asked a question about her campaign finance violations, she has a way of ducking and covering, just like we used to do in the 50s. Well, as we know, the Democrats are up to it again. This time, they want President Trump's tax returns. Is that all? President Trump responds. Let's take a look at this. President Trump responded to the rabid Democrats gunning for his tax returns on Wednesday. The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Representative Richard Neal, a Democrat from Massachusetts, sent a letter to the IRS Wednesday demanding President Trump's tax returns for 2013 through 2018, as well as for several of Trump's businesses. CNN broke the story Wednesday evening. Is that all? Trump said to a reporter on Wednesday who brought up the Dems' request for the last 6 years of his tax returns. Trump said the Democrats are giving up because they usually ask for the last 10 years of his tax returns. We're under audit, Trump continued. Despite what people said, and we're working that out, I'm always under audit, it seems. I've been under audit for many years because the numbers are big, and guess when you have a name, you're audited. Until such time that I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that, Trump said. Let's go ahead and take a listen to President Trump.
The chairman of the Democratic House Ways and Means Committee moments ago asked the IRS for 6 years of your tax returns. What are your...
Is that all?
That's all.
Oh, usually it's 10, so I guess they're giving up. No, we're under audit, despite what people said, and we're working that out, as I'm always under audit, it seems, but I've been under audit for many years because the numbers are big, and I guess when you have a name, you're audited. But until such time as I'm not under audit, I would not be inclined to do that. Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Mic drop. Forget about it. Trump does not need to give them his tax returns, and it's criminal for them to demand them. He's done nothing wrong. He is a successful businessman. He brings money and power and jobs into the United States, okay? He has brought America back from the brink of financial and social ruin. As difficult as things are nowadays, things are so much better than they were just a couple years ago. President Trump has saved the country, and he deserves to have his privacy. There's no need for him to give us his tax returns. He's done nothing wrong. He just said it himself. He's been under audit for the last several years. If there was something fishy going on, if there was something that even wasn't fishy, the IRS would be so far up his behind with a fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass, and they would have charges against him in a heartbeat. But he's done nothing, so there is nothing. The House Democrats launched an investigation into President Trump's tax returns in February. Currently, there is no law requiring a presidential candidate to release their tax returns, but the Democrats don't care about laws. They want to harass President Trump. A hearing of a Ways and Means Oversight Subcommittee in February was meant to begin building a legal case that Trump withholding his tax returns was potentially hiding violations of federal tax laws, therefore compromising U.S. interests. The Democrats argued in that hearing that they have legal authority to invoke an obscure provision in the federal code that allows the chairman of the committee to access private tax information, reported the New York Times. The committee's chairman, Representative Richard Neal, was working for the House's general counsel, Doug Letter, to build a legal argument that will withstand a court challenge, according to the Times. CNN also reported the legal context for Neal's request. Under IRS Code 6103, only the Joint Committee on Taxation, the House Ways and Means Chairman, and the Senate Financial Committee Chairman have the authority to request the tax information of an individual. Democrats believe the statute is clear. Under the code, it says the Secretary shall furnish such committee with any return or return information specified in such request. Is there such a thing as context in these legal codes and laws? It seems to me that it is a violation of President Trump's privacy for them to demand he give up his tax returns. Again, if he had done something wrong, the IRS would have already caught it. As if you need another reason to think that that America has degraded due to the actions of former leaders and the leaders in our beloved and revered institutions, the FBI has refused a FOIA request for emails sent from CNN analyst and former Comey aide Josh Campbell just before the Roger Stone raid. Why? What do they want to hide? How can they deny this FOIA request? The FBI on Tuesday rejected a FOIA request from the Federalist for emails sent to and from CNN the day of the pre-dawn raid of Roger Stone, where CNN just so happened to be camping out. Please provide all emails sent to or received from any account with the CNN.com domain from January 24th, 2019 through January 25th, 2019, the Federalist wrote in its FOIA request. CNN just so happened to be hanging around with the full camera crew at Roger Stone's Fort Lauderdale, Florida home prior to the FBI arriving to conduct a pre-dawn raid of the Trump confidant's home. CNN was the only camera crew on the scene of the FBI raid of Roger Stone's home. They claimed it was just a hunch and good instincts that led them to Stone's home the morning of the raid. It's reporter's instinct, Shortell said after the raid, according to the Washington Examiner. The FBI justified its refusal to provide documents requested by the Federalist by claiming the request was overly broad. In a letter to the Federalist, justifying its refusal to provide the request records, the FBI claimed that the request for emails to and from a specific domain sent or received on 2 specific dates was overly broad, did not provide enough detail to enable personnel to locate the records, and sought information in vague and undefined terms. The FBI further claimed that the underlying request itself, which specified both the date and the sender's or recipient's email domain, did not comply with federal regulations regarding requests for information made under the Freedom of Information Act. In a separate FOIA request, the Federalist specifically asked for any and all FBI emails on the day of Stone's raid sent to and from Josh Campbell. Recall, Josh Campbell, he's the weenie pictured below, is James Comey's former FBI aide turned law enforcement analyst for the Crap News Network. The FBI also rejected the FOIA request on Josh Campbell's emails. How convenient. Using the same rationale, the FBI also rejected a separate FOIA request from the Federalist, which specifically requested any and all FBI emails on the day of the Stone raid sent to or from Josh Campbell, a former FBI employee who worked under James Comey, former director of the FBI, and now works as a law enforcement analyst for CNN, as well as any and all emails from that day, specifically mentioning Roger Stone. The FBI did not explain how a request noting a specific date, specific character string, and specific sender or recipient did not satisfy federal regulations covering open records requests made pursuant to FOIA. The Gateway Pundit obtained exclusive documents in early February showing CNN was tipped off by the Roger Stone raid. Documents obtained exclusively by the Gateway Pundit show a copy of the draft indictment without the PACER filing number or official stamps of the court, with metadata on the document identifying it as being authored by AAW, who was suspected to be then lead special counsel prosecutor Andrew Weissman. Stone's attorneys asked both the House and the Senate Judiciary Committees to investigate these leaks and provide answers to the American people on how someone could have obtained sealed grand jury indictments. As usual, the FBI is covering up their corruption and the ongoing problem of unauthorized leaks to the media. Here's Sean Davis from The Federalist. He says the FBI refused a FOIA request for any emails sent to and from CNN analyst and former FBI staffer Josh Campbell just before the Stone raid. The FBI claimed the request, a day's worth of emails to one person mentioning Roger Stone, was too vague. We still have holdovers from the Hussein administration, and we need to get them out of there. Until that happens, we're going to keep seeing things like this. President Trump wants transparency. President Trump wants truth. He wants honesty. There is no way that we can move forward without it. And in the continuing saga that is Jussie Smollett and the fake MAGA hate case, we have yet another black comedian just trampling his reputation. Comedian Tracy Morgan completely obliterates Smollett on The Tonight Show. Tracy Morgan, the hilarious comedian who starred in the NBC hit show 30 Rock, riffed on hate crime hoaxer Jussie Smollett this week on The Tonight Show. Morgan was chatting with Jimmy Fallon when the talk show host set him up for a string of jokes about the Empire actor who claimed that 2 white men assaulted him and put a rope around his neck as he returned home at 2 a.m. after getting a sandwich. I heard you got a new gig, Fallon said to Morgan. Yeah, they got me a role on Empire, Morgan deadpanned. What are you going to do on that? Fallon asked. Well, contractually, they gave me $1 million. Contractually, all I got to do is not fake a hate crime. As the audience broke into laughter, Morgan said, Jesse! Fallon, also laughing hard, as he always does, said, That's all you have to do? Then he followed up with, You don't buy that story? Nah, man, come on. First of all, racist people don't be jumping nobody in the polar vortex, Morgan joked about the frigid temperatures in Chicago the night of the alleged attack in January. It's too cold. We be racist in the spring. Morgan also said, Racists don't be watching Empire, man. The comedian, who now stars in a show called The Last OG on TBS, also mocked Smollett for hanging onto his sandwich throughout the attack. There was like 10 seconds of footage, and then he disappeared for like 2 seconds. Then he reappears with the noose on his neck, still holding the Subway sandwich, he said. He didn't let that Subway sandwich go. I think it was pepperoni and cheese. Morgan joined comedian Chris Rock in mocking the actor. At the NAACP Image Awards on Saturday, where Smollett was nominated for his role in the Fox series, Rock said he was told by event organizers no Jussie Smollett jokes. Then he did some jokes anyways. And we know about that because I covered it over the weekend. Oh, this is great. I love it that people are now finally talking about the fact that this was a fake crime. There was no crime committed other than lying to the police and disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace, whatever it was that Jussie had previously been charged with, and then got away scot-free. Well, it looks like he's not going to get away 100% scot-free. He's certainly not going to get away with his career. Well, it wouldn't be a day in the life of Red Pill 78 without covering something having to do with the Mueller witch hunt, the Russia collusion delusion. The Dems have done it. It's a showdown. The House Judiciary authorizes subpoena for the full unredacted Mueller report. The Democrat-controlled House Judiciary Committee authorized a subpoena for Mueller's full report without redactions on Wednesday in a 24-17 vote. The resolution also authorized the Judiciary Committee to issue subpoenas and testimony from 5 current and former Trump aides. The aides include White House counsel Don McGahn, former White House strategist Steve Bannon, former communications director Hope Hicks, and former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, as well as former White House aide Ann Donaldson. The Constitution charges Congress with holding the president accountable for alleged official misconduct. That job requires us to evaluate the evidence for ourselves, not the Attorney General's summary, not a substantially redacted synopsis, but the full report and the underlying evidence, House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler said in his opening statement Wednesday. Nadler also said that so far, Bill Barr has refused to work with him to help obtain access to the materials. The department is wrong to try and withhold the information from this committee. Congress is entitled to all of the evidence. This isn't just my opinion, it's also a matter of law, Nadler added. Nadler also indicated that he isn't planning on immediately issuing the subpoena and that he would give Bill Barr time to change his mind. But if we cannot reach an accommodation, then we will have no choice but to issue subpoenas for these materials, Nadler warned. And if the department still refuses, then it should be up to a judge, not the president or his political appointee, to decide whether or not the appropriate for the committee to review the complete record. Let's take a listen to Jerry Nadler.
In late 1973, the Nixon administration had an idea. When Special Counsel Archibald Cox asked the White House to turn over recordings of conversations held in the Oval Office, President Nixon offered instead to provide the tapes to Senator John Stennis of Mississippi. Nixon proposed that Stennis, who was famously hard of hearing, would listen to the recordings himself, then provide summaries of the tapes to the special prosecutor. The Nixon administration justified the proposal as a means to protect sensitive information that would not ordinarily be made part of the record. In hindsight, of course, we know that President Nixon had ulterior motives. In any event, Cox had a job to do. That job required him to evaluate the full record for himself, and he refused the president's offer. President Nixon ordered him fired the next day. The dynamics of the Stennis Compromise, as it became known, should sound familiar to us. The Trump administration has an idea. They want to redact the Mueller report before they provide it to Congress. The Department of Justice says the proposal is a means to protect sensitive information that would not ordinarily be made part of the record. But we have reason to suspect this administration's motives. The Mueller report probably isn't the, quote, total exoneration, unquote, the president claims it to be. And in any event, the committee has a job to do. The Constitution charges Congress with holding the president accountable for alleged official misconduct. That job requires us to evaluate the evidence for ourselves, not the Attorney General's summary, not a substantially redacted synopsis, but the full report and the underlying evidence. The Attorney General proposes to redact 4 categories of information from the Mueller report: grand jury information, classified information, information related to ongoing prosecutions, and, quote, information that may unduly infringe on the personal privacy and reputational interests of peripheral third parties, close quote. The Department is wrong to try to withhold that information from this committee. Congress is entitled to all of the evidence. This isn't just my opinion. It is also a matter of law.
It's not evidence if you have innocent Americans caught in the crossfire who have done nothing wrong and who have not been charged with anything, who were only innocently questioned because of their peripheral nature in Donald Trump's life. Jerry Nadler is a real weenie. Mueller's team interviewed 500 witnesses and issued 2,800 subpoenas in an investigation that spanned over 675 days, with a total of 19 high-powered lawyers. Under special counsel rules, Mueller is to give Attorney General Bill Barr a confidential report. Barr is redacting people's names who were not indicted. The law protects people named in the report who have not been indicted, especially if it's grand jury material. It's a crime to release grand jury material without the approval of the courts, and it's even a crime to release it to Congress without the approval of the courts, Alan Dershowitz said. Jerry Nadler needs to brush up on his American law. Ooh, look! Nellie Orr has been caught lying to Congress about when she obtained her ham radio license. Did Nellie Orr evade NSA surveillance with a ham radio? I've said that many times on my program. Representative Doug Collins released the transcript of Nellie Orr's October testimony to the House Judiciary Committee last Thursday. Well, Nellie Orr, Fusion GPS contractor and wife of twice-demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr, testified to Congress that she received her ham radio license well before her employment at Oppo research firm Fusion GPS. Well, that was a lie. Although Nellie Orr's ham radio license was publicly available prior to her testimony, the application was obtained through a FOIA request, and it confirmed she applied for the license May 23, 2016, and received it the same day. "How long have you had a ham radio?" a congressional aide asked Nellie Orr. Nellie Orr responded, "Well, I bought it shortly after I got my ham license, and I got, I'm guessing is 2015, but I don't remember exactly. It was, in 2014, I was underemployed and I had some time and I took a Citizens Emergency Community Response Team training." Okay, right. So you're obtaining of a radio and you're taking the class and you're sitting for the exam and ultimately passing and receiving the license. Had nothing to do with your employment at Fusion GPS, a congressman aide asked Nellie. "It was well before," Nellie responded. Well, Miss Orr's ham radio license application dated May 23, 2016, and it was granted the same day per that FOIA doc pictured right here. Let's see, submitted 5/23. Nellie Orr? Ah, that's it. That sure does it. That is perjury right there. I wonder if Nellie is going to be one of the names that Devin Nunes puts forward for a criminal indictment. Nellie Orr worked for the Oppo research firm Fusion GPS and funneled information to her husband, Bruce Orr, a high-ranking DOJ official, so he could pass it on to the FBI. Bruce Orr worked as a back channel between the Oppo researchers, dossier author Christopher Steele, and the FBI. The FBI had previously terminated Christopher Steele as a confidential human source on November 21st, 2016, for communicating with media contacts, which is a violation of policy for informants. Bruce Orr continued to funnel info from Christopher Steele to the FBI after the British spy was fired by the Bureau. Bruce Orr previously testified that in 2016, his wife, Nellie Orr, provided him with another dossier on a memory stick, which he gave to the FBI. Nellie Orr refused to answer many questions by lawmakers by invoking marital privilege. Nellie Orr refused to answer many questions by lawmakers by invoking marital privilege. Although she admitted she did a lot of research on Carter Page, she claimed that she didn't think any of her work ended up in the fake Russia dossier. Well, here is Technofog, a great researcher on Twitter. He says, "We did a FOIA on Nellie Orr's ham radio application to confirm our dates were right. Application was granted 5/23/16. Oh, dated and then granted the same day. She testified under oath that she got the license in 2014. False. Well before her time with Fusion. False." Oh, Nellie. Better watch out. Here comes Devin. All right, in our final story of the evening, Senator Tom Cotton has called for an IRS investigation into the political hate group Southern Poverty Law Center. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas joined Tucker Carlson on Tuesday night to discuss the controversial and racist Southern Poverty Law Center. Senator Cotton says it's time for the IRS to investigate tax-exempt status of the SPLC hate group. Cotton says the SPLC is a political hate group. They have a hate May, and they use it to stigmatize their political opponents, respectable center-right organizations like the Family Research Council and Alliance Defending Freedom. There are plenty of groups on the left that I don't agree with, but I don't try to stigmatize them as a hate group and then go peddle that to CNN, the New York Times, or attack their donors. Senator Cotton added, "Serial, repeated defamation of your political opponents is not a tax-exempt purpose." Cotton argues the SPLC is a hate group masquerading as a nonprofit. Let's take a listen.
The Southern Poverty Law Center recently lost its founder, Morris Dees, and its president, Richard Cohen, after multiple allegations that the organization they ran had become a hotbed of sexual harassment, sexism, and racism. But that's not SPLC's only problem right now. It calls itself an anti-hate organization, but in fact, the SPLC strongly resembles a racket. They've amassed more than $500 million by calling any enemy of the Democratic Party a racist or an anti-gay bigot or whatever works in an effort to purge them from society. For doing all of that, they get an indirect government support because they're a tax-exempt entity. Senator Tom Cotton is a Republican, represents the state of Arkansas. He recently sent a letter to the IRS urging them to investigate the SPLC's tax-exempt status. Senator Cotton joins us tonight. Senator, thanks very much for coming on. So just the obvious question first. This is an organization, a small organization that has a $500 million endowment. How are they tax exempt exactly?
Yeah, so the Southern Poverty Law Center has over $500 million. About a quarter of that, Tucker, is parked in overseas accounts, as best we can tell. I don't know many charitable advisors say it's best practice to send your endowment to overseas accounts in the Caribbean. That's one reason why Charity Watch gives them an F rating, a very well deserved F rating, because you said, Tucker, they've really become kind of a hate group themselves. They have this so-called hate map, and they use it to stigmatize their political opponents. You know, respectable center-right organizations like the Family Research Council, their Alliance Defending Freedom. It's fine if you don't agree with those organizations. There are plenty of groups on the left I don't agree with, but I don't try to stigmatize them as a hate group and then go peddle that to CNN, the New York Times, try to attack their donors.
Of course, and it's not a question of disagree. I mean, you're not calling for lots of liberal organizations to lose their tax exemption, but if you are a clearly fraudulent organization that mismanages your money, and you're basically running a for-profit organization, how do you keep your tax exemption?
And that's what I've asked the IRS to investigate. I mean, funding lawsuits, to include left-wing lawsuits, in what you think is the public interest, is a tax-exempt purpose. Serial, repeated defamation against your political opponents is not a tax-exempt purpose. And then talking about misusing funds, Tucker, I mean, Morris Dees, the founder there, was paid $400,000 a year, apparently to do nothing other than consistently sexually harass young women working at the Southern Poverty Law Center.
And according to its own employees, commit acts of racism, even as they claim to fight racism. So is there no body? So once you receive, as a procedural question, once you receive tax exemption from the Internal Revenue Service, do you just keep it forever?
So the Internal Revenue Service is responsible for adjudicating initial tax exemptions and then also reviewing it as well. That's why I've asked the IRS to review the Southern Poverty Law Center's tax exempt status. They were founded decades ago. They claim that their role was to fund lawsuits, to eliminate the Democrat system of Jim Crow and segregation. Right. Now they've turned into just a serial defamer of their political opponents. That's why the IRS needs to relook at their tax exempt status.
And I hope they will. And what about Media Matters, which also has tax exempt status, but which was caught, I mean, without any question at all, coordinating with the Hillary Clinton for President campaign in violation of federal tax law, and yet they retained their
So tax-exempt charities should not be coordinating with any political campaign. They shouldn't be engaged in political activities. I think it says something about the Southern Poverty Law Center that they recently hired Tina Chin, the Jussie Smollett fixer, Michelle Obama's former chief of staff, to come on and fix their workplace culture, or perhaps to take advantage of the $500 million they have and form a super PAC to attack the president and the Republican Party next year in the election.
There's no body that can essentially audit the, I mean, what it needs is an audit, clearly.
It needs an audit very badly. I hope the IRS will do that as part of their investigation and unveil to the American people that Southern Poverty Law Center has become nothing but a racket that's designed solely to slander and defame its political opponents.
So the IRS was caught under President Obama hurting conservatives, refusing to grant their organizations tax exemption for purely political reasons, and no one was ever really punished for that. Can you get them to pay attention to your request, do you think?
I certainly hope we can. The letter that I sent today is just the first step I'm taking to try to get the IRS focused on this serious problem. You have, again, a $500 million so-called charity that has systematic racial and sexist discrimination problems. And at the same time, it's simply using that money to target its political opponents. Yeah. That's not what American taxpayers are subsidizing when we give people tax exempt status. We give those things to churches or adoption shelters or shelters for battered women, not to defame your political opponents, sexually harass every woman that works in your office, and discriminate against minorities.
It'd be nice to get the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ over there. Maybe they could do what they did with Roger Stone.
Or the Department of Labor or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Senator Cotton, it's great to see you tonight. Thank you very
Tucker.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want my tax dollars going to fund a hate group. I don't want my tax dollars going to fund anything that's going to deny someone the right to live in America and speak their mind, speak freely. So I really do think that it's disgusting what the Southern Poverty Law Center does, and I can only hope that Senator Cotton's advances with the IRS help them find their way out of the tax-exempt loophole they find themselves in. All right, guys, one final thing. I've had multiple people comment on my videos and tell me that I pronounce the word bean incorrectly. Well, I suggest to everyone that it is a matter of dialect. It depends on where you live, but if you go to the Cambridge English Dictionary, here's how you pronounce it in the UK.
Bean.
And here's how to pronounce bean in American English.
Bean.
So it looks like, however you pronounce it, I'm pronouncing it correctly. Now, I actually found lots of stuff to say that it doesn't matter. You can pronounce it Ben, bean, bin. All of these different ways are correct. It just depends on where you're from. And I guess where I'm from, they pronounce it bean. All right, everyone, that's all I have for you tonight. I want to thank you for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.